Welcome. I'm Guy, and you are watching this presumably on YouTube, and you are listening to this on the podcast feed. With me today is once again a return to the show. It's been 3 weeks, maybe a month. I don't know. Return to the show for my good buddy and one of the smartest people in sports, JD John Dickinson. He covers the 49ers, also covers the Warriors and the Giants when time permits for KNBR radio in San Francisco. 50,000 watts throughout the state of California, sometimes in Reno and Arizona if the
and Utah
sky is clear and the desert air is cool. And we got a lot to talk about today. We are coming to you via a browser called Restream, which sucks. But we're trying it today because I've had some computer problems the last couple of days, only with my StreamYard, which may also suck, but may not suck. Maybe it's my computer. We're about to find out when I try some stuff later, but we'll edit that out of the podcast because who cares? JD, what's up, man? It's good to see you. Thanks for making time.
Yeah, and you had said, hey, it's been 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, it's been longer than that. But that's right. It was all coming back to me now. I was on with Josh Dubow, and we were breaking down the NFL schedule, and it's nice to know. Nice to know when all the games are. It's also nice to know that training camp's just around the corner, although still a little ways away. We're kind of in this dead zone of June and into July and around the 4th of July holiday, but it's not really a dead zone if you're Trevor Lawrence.
No, it's not. It's a very much a live zone. Trevor Lawrence, his Cabo trip just got a lot better, or Ibiza, or wherever he is. Yeah, I mean, do we have a date on minicamp? Right now, it's Thursday night. It's July 13th. The thing you need to understand this, I mean this sincerely about JD, is he is meticulous. And when I said to him, what day do you think minicamp's going to start? He said to me, well, last year it started on whatever it was, July
25th. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know. Have you checked the calendar? What's your guess?
July 23rd, I believe, will be the report date. And then the first practice on Wednesday, the 24th. Now that can always move around a day here, a day there, pending Kyle Shanahan's preference or the fact that there's an extra day for the 49ers because they open on Monday night against the Jets. So he has a little wiggle room, but I'm guessing he'll keep it pretty much on brand with the way he had it last year, which was, everybody has the report day. That's where, all of the, he speaks to the media and John Lynch will speak to the media and a couple of the key players will speak to the media, but no practice on the day that everybody comes in and gets their physicals. And then it's 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off there for 3 or 4 different stretches until you get to within about a week of that first preseason game. And then you back it up from there. And there's, not to get way in the weeds there, but then Kyle can decide how he wants to, structure it as far as that. And they've got some,
which is fine for us because practice gets closed at that point. And
well, it gets closed a little later than that. It's actually, you get through the first. It's up until before the third preseason game. I actually may even be through the third preseason game now.
I can't remember.
Yeah, but fans are able to. It gets closed to the fans after that first few groups of 3. I think before before they get into that first preseason game mode, it closes down. So there'll be a lot of practices, man. There'll be a lot of practices that we can all see and break down. And of course, the big question, Guy.
Yeah,
July 23rd. Will Brandon Aiyuk be there?
I thought you were going to say Josh Dobbs or Brandon Allen. Who wins round 1?
Well, that'll be the question after we figure out what's going on with Brandon Aiyuk.
Yeah, and before we get to Trevor Lawrence, and I want your Aiyuk take today too. But before we get to Trevor Lawrence, I should just say I thought I enjoyed these last couple of days because the Niners were done, and I spent I'm in the office just working on a variety of things, and I just had coach press conferences just running all day. And I'm watching John Harbaugh, and I'm watching Stefanski, and I'm watching Mike McDonald, and I'm watching Tomlin. And I really enjoyed that, So it was, I like that the Niners did theirs, quote unquote, in kind of the early window. All right. Before we get to Aiyuk, Trevor Lawrence contract today, not insignificant from a 49ers perspective, but just significant NFL news, but significant from a Brock Purdy perspective. Although there's going to be one contract in particular that's really significant from a Brock perspective. But Trevor Lawrence gets really close, and maybe as the real money begins to trickle out, even closer to the Joe Burrow deal. Joe Burrow was the number 1 overall pick in 2020. Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 overall pick in 2021. Joe Burrow got $275 million total. Trevor Lawrence got $275 million total. Same years, so it equals $55 million a year for Burrow, $55 million a year for Lawrence. $146 million in full guarantees for Joe Burrow, $142 million in full guarantees for Trevor Lawrence. And so when I saw that deal, JD, it struck me. I was aware of the fact that I was surprised that the contract wasn't bigger than Burrow's, just because you're so used to every contract when it comes to a quarterback not really being about, well, is he better than the other guy? It's just the next guy up gets the next biggest contract. But basically the same contract for Trevor Lawrence. They were in a tough spot. I mean, his 5th-year option, which they'd picked up, is going to be $25 million next year, right? He's coming into his 4th year in the NFL. And they would have loved for him to have an incredible year last year, and then he probably would have got paid more than Joe Burrow. But it goes to show, I mean, you don't have to be an all-pro to get all-pro money, and there's still plenty of questions about Trevor Lawrence. But, you know, I can't imagine. Are you surprised at all when you see this money for Trevor Lawrence?
I was not surprised, but I also think the Jags were able to get a little bit of a, okay, you're not quite as good as Joe Burrow discount. That was my secondary thought. Like, my first thought was, well, they had to pay him, and it would have been, I think, a lot more comfortable for them to pay him at that level or even greater than that level had he had a better 2023 season. But I still think top to bottom, you know, he's by far their best option at trying to, you know, be the best team that they can be here for the next few years. So you do it. And if he turns out not to be a guy, then you may be screwed by it for a couple of years down the road, but you figure it out at that point in time. And so it's one of those, no-brainer, franchises that basically has struggled for the better part of, the last couple of decades, sans a year here, a year there. And I think those types of franchises typically have to sign their guy, whether they're 100% all in on their guy or not. And I think Lawrence has been on the high end good enough to warrant, moving forward with him. But also I think, they did get a little bit of a, all right, you declined somewhat in 2023 discount, if there is such a thing, when it's still right up there, right up there against the top of the top, even if it is slightly below.
My first thought when I saw the contract was, I think Jordan Love's going to get more. Jordan Love did the whole bet on himself thing, and it was weird. Just the situation they got into with him, and he won the bet, and the Packers also win the bet, right? If you have a quarterback that you think is worth paying a lot of money to, you also win the bet if you feel good about it. But I think the Jordan Love contract is going to be, I don't think it's going to be that interesting. I think it's going to be massive. The one that'll be interesting from a Brock perspective is Tua. Because, if Tua gets this kind of money, then, if Tua's getting $55 million a year, then some might say right now, hey man, I got to break the news to you. Brock's getting that much money. He's a better player than Tua.
Well, I mean, that was sort of where I was going with it. I mean, I think he projects with all the weapons and everything, talking about Brock, to be better than Tua, right? To have a better year than Tua, to be more available than Tua. And so, and I think there are a lot of people that are watching or listening to this that are thinking exactly what you just said, which is, well, Brock's already better than Tua, so he's getting. But Brock's going to get his $50 million though, right? Where do you? You're
saying what's his floor?
Yeah, I look at it right now. I mean, it's $50 million is the baseline. I think if they were doing a deal today, which obviously they can't do a deal until next year, and then it'll kick in the following year. But I mean, $50 million with it continuing to move up, and there are a couple of quarterbacks, as you mentioned, that are going to have to get done. Look, it's still on Brock Purdy to go have a great year, because I think the one position the 49ers really don't want to be in is a position where maybe Brock doesn't have quite as good a year as he did last year, or as he has since he took over as the starter at the end of 2022. And the 49ers maybe don't have as good a year, whether that's overall record or just based on the fact that they don't go to the Super Bowl. It will be viewed as not quite as good a year in reality. And it could lead down a weird path of the debate of, are you going to pay Brock Purdy? That is the one storyline. And I know we've talked about this a lot, usually on the field while we're watching the more mundane portions of practice. Like, what are the potential storyline? What are the storylines going into a season? And I think this is a great time to start to dive into these, because it is that break time between now and training camp. What is a storyline for teams or players going into a season versus what the storylines are going to be if certain things happen during that season once you get to the end of that season? And I think, right now, the storyline surrounding Brock is he really going to get over $50 million per year and all this guaranteed money moving forward next year? And I think right now the easy answer, at least for me, is yes, but we also still have to go see Brock Purdy continue to be the same quarterback that he's been at a minimum the last year plus the end of 2022. And anything short of that, and I only say it because we've seen it with Jimmy Garoppolo, where it looked like, hey, this guy's pretty good. And I'm not getting into a Brock-Jimmy debate necessarily, but it's, hey, this guy's pretty good. And then some weird stuff happens and there's some injuries. Maybe the team isn't quite as good. Maybe he isn't just willing them to wins on his own when there's some other adversity within the team, or maybe the team isn't quite as good. And then his numbers aren't quite as good, or he throws a couple critical interceptions here or there. And then we're having a full blown, this time next year, or even before this time next year, are they going to pay Brock Purdy like he's a dude? Not saying one way or another we're going to get to that point, but I definitely think it's something you have to file away as a potential storyline, depending upon how this blank slate of the 2024 season plays out.
Yeah, it's gotten less gray though, right? Like, it is almost entirely now about just the numbers and the wins and losses, and 0% about, well, I don't know, his arm doesn't look this. What's his ceiling as a player, right? Because Trevor Lawrence, who's got all the ceiling and had Brock had a much better season than Trevor Lawrence. Let's start with that, right?
Yes, he did.
Brock Purdy is the better player in 2023. Well, if he's the better player again in 2024, right? Statistically,
60?
Who cares about
62
projections and ceiling? And because if he's like, and I said this yesterday, JD, and I wanted to bounce this off you today. I said, if Brock rolls back in 24 this year with the same numbers, right? Basically the same, 31 touchdowns, 11 picks, 69%, like is top 3 and all these pressure percentages and top number 1 in touchdown percentage, right? He was in the top of a lot of passing categories. Then that means he came back a better player, right? To be a 300 hitter 2 years in a row means you were a better. Did I just start a baseball conversation from 1994?
That's okay.
A 300 hitter. Who's even had a conversation about a 300 hitter in the last 25 years? Since Pete Rose? Have we talked about? But you have to be better to keep doing it because people are adjusting to you. So if Brock rolls out and has 31 touchdowns, 11 picks, 69%, 7, all that stuff, then he has every right. And especially when you're the agent, everybody knows, I think this is the other dynamic, the perception of the Niners. And the Niners have always been, I remember years ago, Middlecoff and I interviewed Parag. And he's very careful to not make it seem like he's dancing on the graves of the agents because he outsmarted them and we did a better deal on the Cap deal and the Kittle deal and because the last thing they want is an agent to try and make a point against them because they don't want to look like the guy, just like the old, why don't trade with Billy Beane because it's just, you're going to end up looking bad, right? And so there's also that dynamic. Even if Brock says to his agent, hey man, if we take 50 instead of 56, that means we get to keep, I'm like, hey man, I'll be so happy with 50, bro. It's fine. The agent's like, Brock, I can't have you be the 7th highest paid, the 12th highest paid quarterback in the NFL after you took a team to the Super Bowl again, and you were top 5 MVP voting. We can't do that.
I think you bring up another fascinating aspect of this, which is, and you said it, and I think I probably would have gotten to this point. It's the, what is Brock happy with versus the market and the agents and the negotiations. And like you said, the rank among other quarterbacks at his age range or experience level, or some that he's even surpassed statistically and surpassed significantly in terms of the ability to win and help lead a team to big time heights, like getting to NFC championship games and getting to Super Bowls and overtime in Super Bowls with chances to win. So I think 50 does feel like the baseline right now on June 13th, 2024. What does that look like a year from now? I mean, wait and see. I don't necessarily see that number going down. And if it does, then that's a problem you really don't want to get into. That means something horrible has happened, either, potentially in terms of injury or in terms of a big time regression in terms of the numbers, which if that happened, there would be obviously a big time regression in terms of the wins and losses. But it feels, if things continue along the path that they've been on, with him having, as you mentioned, the next year basically like the last year, then I think 55 is probably the baseline a year from now. I think 50 would be now if they were doing a deal. I think 55 a year from now, and then we'll see Jordan Love, and then we'll see Tua beyond that, because it's interesting. Jordan Love, I got to see it from Jordan Love again. I'm not sure Jordan Love is just a dude yet. And I know everybody wants to declare one way or the other. And I've heard you discuss Jordan Love. I can't remember where you were on him, but I'm in the, you need to see more from Jordan Love for a full year. Not that you shouldn't pay him or if you're the Packers.
Yeah, those are two different things.
But yeah, those are two different things. But I just, in terms of, is Jordan Love, because I don't think the conversation surrounding Jordan Love has not been, he's a good quarterback. The conversation around Jordan Love is morphed into, is he a superstar, or is he going to be a superstar by the end of this year?
Right.
And I'm like, I got to see it. I got to see them go out and win 12, 13 games and him, lead the league in passing and not throw interceptions and make plays that lose you games at times late.
Which is what happened. Right.
And which is what he's done. I mean, he has game. I know we didn't see very many of them in November, December, and January. And we saw that second half against the 49ers. But when he's had bad games in his career, it's been turnovers, and it's been, at inopportune times. And it's been plays that don't win you game. Now, maybe he's making so many plays that it's like Brett Favre, where you can get away with a mistake here, a mistake there, because he's just so damn good that he's always going to, it's going to come out in the wash as a net positive. But I need to see it just on a sidebar Jordan Love, branch of this conversation one more year before I'd be comfortable with, he's my dude for the next decade.
I understand. I mean, I think, so where I am on Love is, coming into last year, I was very pro Love based off one series from one game that he'd played in 2022. And I said last year, I thought the Packers were the surprise team that would make the playoffs in 2023. And they were. For me, they were like pick up a team that was the team I picked on the record. I also, even though I really like him, and I think one thing that Jordan Love really has going for him is Matt LaFleur. I think he's got a top 5 coach, and he's got extreme talent, and he's sharp, and I think they've brought him along pretty well. And I think the other thing he has going for him, JD, he got into some real learning experiences last year, getting into the postseason, going as far as they did, playing the Niners the way they did, failing the way he did. Like, I think all that stuff is good for him. I also think that people may have gone too far this year on the Packers. So, everybody probably thinks everyone always thinks they're the ones in the middle. I like to say I'm Goldilocks. It's just the right amount here just the right amount on Jordan Love.
And look,
which
I'm
is
not,
what, you know.
I'm not saying he can't or doesn't have it or whatever. Like I just like, let's see, are they 10-7 and he's up and down and
Right.
And there's, and again, they probably still have to pay him at that point.
Well, are you definitely out on Trevor? Is Trevor Lawrence definitely not a dude?
I don't think we know. I think he looked like he was going to be after 2022. I think he showed some signs after 2023 that he might not be. But if you can get him back on track, I think he could still be. I'll say this. Like right now, I've seen more from Trevor Lawrence. Hot take. I've seen more on the high end from Trevor Lawrence than I've seen on the high end from Jordan Love.
Yeah, good take. I'd rather have Jordan Love.
But Jordan Love may very well be the better quarterback.
Yeah.
He might be, but I just don't. I just haven't seen it enough. And look, we also saw Trevor Lawrence be a dude and then not be a dude. We've seen Jordan Love not be a dude and then be a dude and then all right. Like what's it going to be this year? Is there going to be a little? Is he going to have the Trevor Lawrence regression type year this year? Or is he going to be an MVP candidate this year?
I think. Well, I don't think it's that, but I just think his coach is so good.
He is. I agree with that.
I think his coach is just excellent. Brock is. I played something yesterday on the show. Christian McCaffrey went on NFL Network and he said, I don't think there's anybody in the world that doesn't believe in Brock, that Brock hasn't proven it to. And then he's like, well, I'm sure there are some doubters out there still, and Brock has done it. The way I put it is Brock's done everything he can to this point. The only thing he can't do is do it over multiple years, which is really when you prove it. But I'll say this, like if Brock does it again, is anyone really freaking out about paying him $55 million a year? Beyond just you always freak out when you pay somebody $55 million a year. But when you have a quarterback that does it for 2.5 straight years, which is what will have happened if he has the same year again, then he will also have, I think, he at least should change some minds along the way. You go, okay, the guys that have his physical skill sets usually don't turn into a dude. There are some exceptions. And if you do it for 2.5 years, you kind of start looking like an exception.
Well, I agree with you as far as he's done everything he possibly can to this point. Like, I think that part's without a doubt true. I would expect it to continue based on Kyle Shanahan. You mentioned LaFleur. Kyle Shanahan, I think, is right there in that same category. We've seen him win playoff games with Brock Purdy. We've seen Brock Purdy have some big-time passing games throughout the regular season. We've seen him overcome adversity in his own way. And then they've got all the weapons, too, which I still – you still have Christian McCaffrey. You still have Debo and I think Aiyuk will be a weapon in 2024. We'll see beyond that. And Kittle and Pearsall, we'll see what he is and all of that.
Look at you.
But I like Pearsall like that. I'll say I like him. Like I'm now Cowing, we'll see. And like, then you start getting in you're getting in the weeds with some of the tight ends they brought in and all that. I'm not going to get in the weeds with you, but I do think Pearsall could be the exception for the 49ers, not to get off on another tangent, but Pearsall, meaning a receiver that could he actually crack the Kyle Shanahan code of kind of like, I'll use a Warriors analogy, kind of like Brandon Pajemski cracked the Steve Kerr code. Like Steve Kerr hates playing rookies. Rookies are never ready. Rookies are always going to get benched. Rookies are never going to get the benefit of the doubt. Play the damn rookie. He's good. All these rookies that everybody thinks are so loaded with talent that couldn't see the court for a couple of years, and some still at the level that at least Warrior fans want. And Brandon Pajemski comes right in, and he's starting games, and in his rookie year over Klay Thompson in his rookie year. Is Pearsall the guy that's able to penetrate the barrier? And I say that kiddingly, but that Kyle Shanahan is. I mean, it took Brandon Aiyuk really until his third year, and maybe COVID was part of that, but the end of his second year to be any kind of a factor at all, and really his third year to be any kind of a big time factor, and then his fourth year to be like, okay, this guy might be a dude. So it just but he was in the doghouse in 2021. I mean, it took him till the back half of that year to really be impactful. So can Pearsall penetrate that and be on the field a lot? And I think the early return on that, without seeing training camp at all, is I think he might.
Yeah, he hasn't tried to get anybody open on anybody that's jamming him, or worn pads. But yes, and I think the reason is he's on a different team than Brandon Aiyuk was on, and his role is different than
Fair.
The expectations, in a way, are different for him.
But all of these
now
are weapons
it's hard.
For Purdy. All of these are weapons for Purdy.
No, it's true. It's true. And I'll just say this about Ricky Pearsall. It's hard. Like, the guy I think about it. You remember, baseball fans may remember this guy. You remember Brandon Finnegan? You remember that name?
I do.
That guy was
the Royals, right?
He was on the Royals in 2012. He pitched for TCU in the College World Series, and then pitched for the Royals in that same season and into the postseason and into the World Series against the Giants.
Yes.
And it's one thing to be a starter on a bad team where we're going to give you you're going to get a bunch of balls. It's another thing when your moments are such bright lights. And in a way, I think Ricky Pearsall's moments are going to be really bright light situations. Not that everyone will notice it in the moment, but you're going to get like a ball. And it's going to be because everyone's attention's on Debo or Aiyuk or Jennings or whatever's going on. So it better work, in the same way that it hurts when like Juice is running wide open and you miss him. It's like, oh shit, we spent 3 quarters setting that play up,
No question.
By the way, JD, we can do a little AMA here today because I watched the second half of the Super Bowl. So I actually, as an example of me being Goldilocks, and I'm not done with this Purdy conversation, but as an example, as you may know, I've been buying up a lot of people's Debo Samuel stock, while I also have been saying the Niners can't hit a deep ball because they don't get open, they don't throw it well. And then I'd forgotten, I've got a screenshot here. Here is Debo, wide open, beat his man by 4 steps in the end zone, but they couldn't block it up for Purdy because he went play action into the pressure, and they missed him. So that was fourth quarter down by.
Yeah, but the ball, is that a deep ball though? I mean, the ball looks like it's on the 22. Is the ball on the 22? Like, where's the ball? I'm looking at the yellow line. What it was 1st and 10 at the 22.
It's an over the top 45-yard throw. That qualifies.
22, drop back there. Okay. Yeah, you're right. You drop back. Okay.
Hold on now.
You're at the 30. You're okay.
I don't know how to get this stupid.
You're gonna get the show's gonna end early, fellas.
All right.
Show's gonna end early, everybody.
Haberman's pissed off. All right, Brock. So you're right now, your opinion is he's getting
50 minimum.
50 minminimum.
50 per year minimum.
So
my eyes glaze over when I start doing the guarantees and the years.
Here's the other thing we need to talk about though, is he's different than all these other guys because all of these other guys have money built into their contracts. Right.
Yeah.
Like Trevor's got $25 million on the books next year. So for them to give him a raise, they have to give him a significant raise. I mentioned this the other day because I was talking about Aiyuk and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And our buddy who was on last time you were on, Josh Dubow, came up to me at Niner practice and he said, well, the one thing you got to remember that's different between Aiyuk and Amon-Ra was a 3rd-round pick. Ayuk's a 1st-round pick. Ayuk's got like 12 and a half or 13 and a half, $14 million coming to him this year, 14. Amon-Ra had like 1.8 or whatever it was. So the gap, like you can't give Aiyuk $5 million more than Amon-Ra because that just means the gap has closed by $7 million, right? If you're Aiyuk, you're like, I was already making $12 million more than that guy. I can't now be making $5 million more than that guy. I'm worth $12 million.
You can more. If that guy's a better player than you are.
Well, yeah, but I do think he has we can debate that, and you could even have the opinion that Amon-Ra's better. But I think Aiyuk has all of the ammo to say, you drafted me here, they drafted him there. They're really happy with him. You're thrilled with me. I'm still worth. The gap should not close between me and that guy.
I think that's 100% fair from a negotiating standpoint. Like I don't have any pushback on that. I think he probably will say that. I also think that the 49ers are in a position where they're looking at it as, and you hate having to be in this position, and I don't know that it's said out loud, but I think it probably is inferred in terms of the offers and things like that. But it's, he probably will say that, but that to me, that doesn't indicate like, I think Amon-Ra's better. And I think he's, we can get into the reasons why, but the fact that, but I know Aiyuk thinks that he's better. I think to kind of finish the point, as I lost my train of thought there for a second, to finish the point on Aiyuk, like the Niners are almost in this weird spot where they have to infer that Amon-Ra St. Brown is a better player. And I think that may only piss Aiyuk off more in his camp and his agent, because I don't think there's any way they believe it, in addition to the logic that you brought to the table, fair or unfair, as the commenters.
Yeah, people don't like it. I understand.
Disgraced.
Yeah, I get it. Like, someone said, by that logic, Brock will never make any money because he was the last pick. I mean, I understand.
Well, no, Brock
it.
will say, I want $100 million because I haven't been paid yet.
What you're making does affect what you're willing to accept, right? Like, to Brock Purdy.
Well, I think that's also the age. I mean, I'll say this for Brock in his situation. I do think, and we see this happen all the time in NBA contracts. I think it happens in baseball too, but more in baseball, where you have the arbitration process and you have really productive players for 2-3 years who are making a fraction of what they probably should be making, and extremely productive and helping winning and all of these things. And they're stuck because of the contractual process and arbitration and all that. And their only recourse is to go back and get that money when they're actually a free agent. And look, it's so skewed with Brock and not even making $1 million up until this point in a season and all of that. It's so skewed to, like, Brock can't say, but the agent will, to every possible way he can, will say, well, this dude's been a $30 million quarterback the last 2 years. And so now that doesn't mean you're going to ask for 80, but it also means you might want 60 as opposed to 50, or 62 as opposed to 50. Like I do think it's fair, not how it necessarily works, but I do think it's fair for the agent, as we start to project toward this Brock contract, to go back and say, hey, you got 2, maybe 3 unbelievable, 2.5 for sure. Well, and maybe even another one next year, right? You got 3 full seasons of a dude basically making $1 million or less when he performed at the level of a $30 to $40 million quarterback.
Yeah.
So and granted, even if he had been the number 1 pick or a first round pick, he wouldn't have been making 30 to 40 million. But there is some kind of middle ground there as to, all right, he by a rookie scale standard, maybe he was a $15 million quarterback over the last couple of years. So we want to get some of that money back, which, again, Parag's not going to roll with that, and I think that's where the negotiation does or doesn't get sticky. But I can understand an agent saying, you got to recoup some of leading this team to the Super Bowl and, putting up multiple great seasons, if it winds up being that, if he has another great one this year.
I just think in the end, there's not really anything really to debate. When it comes to quarterbacks who are playing well.
The number is the number, but it goes back to they have to keep them.
Well, what's Tua going to like? Tua's going to get something in this range. It may be a little less than Trevor Lawrence, but it's going to be in this world. And my initial thought on Tua is I like Brock more. And JD, I don't think it's even close. I mean, it's not. Yeah, I would agree with that. By many statistical categories, they actually end up kind of lumped together in a lot of categories. They do, and I think Brock is. I think Brock is better like that. Like we don't know about Jordan Love. I think Brock's better than Tua. And I don't know how much better, maybe I'm proven wrong on this. I don't know how much better Tua is going to get off of the player that he is now. And he's got an offensive coordinator, head coach scheming things up. And he's got some offensive talent around him at the wide receiver and running back positions. And so, what happens if as they start to pay him, his weaponry around him goes down a little bit? Is he going to be a dude that's just an automatic because he's your dude? Like, to me, the barometer for a quarterback, and look, I'm going to, like,
do you have a dude that's just going to, because he's on your team, almost regardless of everything else, you're going to win 9-10 games? Like minimum. Does he raise your floor to 9-10 games? I don't think Tua is one of those guys.
Well, who is Mahomes?
Well, Mahomes is one. I think Allen's one. I think Burrow's one when he's healthy.
Lamar.
I think Lamar, and I think Lamar is definitely in his own way. A lot of the guys that have recently retired were that. Tom, Aaron. I mean, Aaron's obviously still playing. I think Aaron was that guy for a long time, right? The Packers.
Yeah.
In years where he was
healthy.
We'll
see that this year. That'll be interesting this year. Like, is Aaron
he's also 40 or 39 or going to be 40 or so. I think that gets factored in there as far as all that goes. But I don't know. I like Brock more than I like Tua, even if you want to say similar type situations with being coached up and offensive weaponry and all of that.
Yeah, I don't think there's a ton of debate on that. I don't think.
Not here. Not in the Bay.
Here. Yeah,
not in California.
No, I just know I wouldn't. I don't think they would take him, and I think Mike McDaniel would swap. I think he would switch.
I think he would too. I think he would too. I think he would too, knowing everything that he knows.
Part of it, honestly, is the athleticism. Like, Brock can just get away a little better.
No doubt.
Brock is bigger.
Well, and I think Brock is also, and we'll see, I think Brock's more durable and we'll see, because that's one of the things with Brock I think you wonder about is he going to be durable throughout his career? But how many games has he missed since he became the starter?
I mean, a half.
Exactly. So, yeah. I mean, that, to this point, and he's dealt with some things. He's dealt with some injuries, and he's had some things pop up, and the concussion thing's obviously no joke. If those things continue to happen, that can be problematic. But they've to this point, he's been available, which I know the 49ers like. And he's toughed it out in some situations.
Yes. He probably could have come back in the Ravens game, right?
Yeah.
But I had this stat. It's not a stat. The thing the other day. This is only the second time in the Shanahan era that Kyle has finished a season with a starting quarterback, had a full off season with that quarterback. A full regular off season. It happened in 19 with Jimmy, but it was the COVID year, so he didn't get that. And then it happened.
Wait, what was the other year?
It was Jimmy. It was Jimmy coming into his second year.
Okay.
So Kyle's first year was also Jimmy's first year, which those do not feel like.
But he didn't have a full year at Jimmy.
He didn't have a full year, but he just hit the offseason knowing who his starter was, and then had a full regular offseason with that guy.
Right. So this is the first time he's had a guy for a full year, and then had a normal offseason, and knowing that it's going to be that guy the next year.
Which is, it's nothing other than interesting. I do think it's something. I do think him and Brock.
Well, yeah, because this time last year. And I think the indications were that Brock was going to be healthy, and he was. But this time last year, it was, is Brock going to be healthy? Is he going to be cleared by the beginning of training camp? Remember, he was, and then even the first couple of practices, it was 2 on, 1 off. Remember, he had the throwing schedule.
I do.
Brock had the
2
on, 1 off, and does an off day count as a non-throw day? And then at first it did, and so he didn't practice.
And then he disappeared.
Everybody freaked out.
Yeah.
Where's Brock? And then Kyle, I think, I don't want to say misspoke, but remember it was Kyle said, "Oh yeah, it's 2 on, 1 off, 2 on, 1 off, 2." And then he was like, "Oh, he got bumped up to another thing," and then there was a day where he was supposed to throw, and everybody knew and he didn't throw. And Kyle's like, "Oh no, actually, they changed it."
I remember sitting in the press conference going, I don't want to ask a stupid question, but I'm pretty sure something was this was not the schedule, but the schedule.
I don't think it was. And then he said, "Well, the schedule's fluid," or he said, or the doctors changed it because of this and that. And either he didn't it ended up being innocuous and irrelevant because there wasn't that point. And because remember, we had that conversation again, one of these on-field conversations as we're watching practice. We had that conversation as we're all kind of wondering and watching Brock. What you don't want, and it didn't happen, was that day where all right, this is the day where he's going to start going full bore. And then all of a sudden you walk out there and he's not out there. And it's like, well, why? And this was this was not only a day he was going to throw, but this was a full padded day. And it never happened, which is a good thing. It's a testament to Brock. It's a testament to how they handled the injury with the plan that they had. And he was ready to roll and had a great year. But there were, I mean, you think of those funny camp discussions, and it was like every day it could have been that day where Brock wasn't out there when he was supposed to be. And it's like, well, he's had a setback or he's got a little soreness. He's got a little sore. Yeah. But it never happened.
Yeah. It let Sam Darnold shine. Did you have an Aiyuk take?
Well, my Aiyuk take is the same take that it's been like they got to keep him. And it's tied to the Pearsall thing and the inability. And look, I know Deebo Samuel was an extremely productive player as a rookie going back to 2019, but Deebo Samuel wasn't. I mean, he's not really a true like throw the ball to him, down the field wide receiver. And so it's like, yes, he was more of a weapon. He was more of a weapon than a true wide receiver, like an all-purpose weapon. So I think that made it easier, but like it's just like pay the guy, and like I don't like the scenario, and it's been hinted at a little bit. Matt Mayoko, I think he hinted at it on KNBR the last week or so. I'm sure you've talked about it. Just the notion of do the 49ers have a price point on Aiyuk where it just becomes untenable, or it becomes like that we're just not going to do that. And so maybe we'll play out the year and then trade him, or maybe they look to trade him in season or what. Like it just like get the guy signed. Don't have it be a distraction for this season when you're all in on trying to go to and win a Super Bowl, and then deal with it down the line. If it means Deebo's gone, it means Deebo's gone. If it means Pearsall's awesome as a rookie and that gives you some flexibility to get rid of somebody else to get your financial house in order, then do that. But I still think the 49ers are foolish. I'm not saying they think this, but if they think they can get by without Aiyuk this season, I think they're foolish. And again, there's nothing trending toward him not being on the team. It's just a matter of how, for 2024, it's just a matter of how ugly is it really going to get? Because as ugly as it may or may not have gotten to this point, the moment we all show up on July 23rd and he's not there, if that's the way, it gets ugly. At that point, it gets ugly. And I get it. The Niners have the leverage, as a wonderful commenter has pointed out here. But yes, you can have the leverage, and eventually Aiyuk will show up. Because he's going to have to if he wants to get paid. But you don't want that. Like, I don't want my wide receiver that I need to be forced to show up because he's going to start getting fined or losing game checks. Like, that's not a recipe for a harmonious, all-in, let's go redemption tour to win a Super Bowl. Like, I don't like that, and I hope the 49ers aren't thinking of it that way, to the tune of, we're going to hold the line, and he's going to come in, and damn it, we're going to get it knocked down $3 or $4 million per year, and he's going to take our deal because we have the leverage. And then he's going to, but it's going to take till September, and he's going to be all pissed off, and it makes things weird. I just, to me, that's a recipe for disaster in some ways for the 49ers. So that's my take.
Well, it's a very practical take. And I think I would like to add even another practical element to it, which is the last two players they have had do contracts in the offseason the last 2 years, the big deals, Bosa and Deebo. Both have admitted that the offseason contract affected them.
Bingo.
Not like bothered me, not made me angry, but affected how good of a player I was.
Yeah.
That's in a very fundamental way.
Well, and they down, and I'll even use.
Aren't you like I would just one more thing I'll say. I think it's interesting when you like in college athletics, you've seen teams, institute the realignment, conference realignment, and what has happened is some programs move conferences with leverage and some don't. So when USC and UCLA went to the Big Ten, they had full leverage. What does that mean? It means they got a full share of the television money. That means if Ohio State's getting 80 million, USC's getting 80 million. Well, Washington and Oregon didn't have as much leverage. What does that mean? They didn't get a full share. That means if USC's getting 80 and Ohio State's getting 80, Washington's getting 45 or whatever the number is. Now, Oregon's got Phil Knight and Nike. They can handle it. But if you are going to invest, right, like it's better for the Big Ten if USC gets 80 million because then they're a better football program. And if you're going to invest all this money in Brandon Aiyuk, you want him to be Brandon Aiyuk when he shows up while you're trying to win a Super Bowl.
Yes.
Your last run with all these guys together.
Well, and Bosa wasn't that. I mean, they said all year, and I called it out, and we talked about it, like all training camp, Bosa doesn't need to be here. Bosa doesn't need to be here. Bosa plays a position, like he's a rock star. He's like, he'll be fine. He doesn't need to be here. The deal was going to get done. I think the Niners didn't believe that Bosa was going to be, I don't think they believed he was going to take it to Labor Day. They should have known. And I said many times, like, he's going to take it.
He's a Bosa
all the way. And for the Niners to think that he was going to be any different was, I think, foolish. The honest thing here, though, is they were pissed that he wasn't there, and they were just lying, saying that they weren't, and it didn't matter, and it mattered. And you're right. He wasn't the player at times last year that he said it. I needed. He's at the OTAs and the mini camp, and he's doing all these things that he hasn't done in previous years. So I think there's something to be said for harmony. And, I see the comment you put up, and I'll like
read it.
It's Chris Jones. Like, it's like we're not talking about the Chiefs.
For people listening, Nick on the stream said Chris Jones literally held out the season and got paid and won the Super Bowl. No impact, made the winning play in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, which is fair, but that's not how it's played out for the 49ers. Like, the Chiefs are in a different, like, I understand the thought on that. But the Chiefs are in a different. Like, the Chiefs, when you've won, like, you can deal with more BS and like know that you can still win at the end of the day. The Niners haven't. It goes back to my NBA NFL comparison that gets everybody all wound up here in the Bay, and we'll see because it's about to change. And Niner fans go crazy. I don't know that I want to bring this to your space here, but. You know who the NBA comp is to the 49ers, right? I've told you this.
I'm gonna guess. It's the Kawhi Paul George Clippers.
No, it's the Boston Celtics.
What's wrong with that?
They haven't won a title. They're about to
tomorrow.
Well, they're about to, but
Friday.
But they've been the can't.
Oh,
the can't do it team.
Yeah,
that's knocked on the door.
Change coaches. One of their guys can't dribble.
Knocked on the door. Yeah. And eventually got over the hump. I mean, made some changes there, but a team that was built from the draft.
NBA champion in a few years, by the way.
What's that?
Our first legitimate NBA champion in a few years.
How
We've only had 2 legitimate NBA champions like the last 5 years.
What does that mean? Legitimate.
It means I'm kind of making fun here and
let me guess, the Warriors are the other one. The Warriors are the other one.
Yeah, like what I mean by legitimate is like we'll look back in 25 years.
Like a brand, because you're all about
branding. Not even a brand.
The Celtics or the Lakers or the Warriors, because
the Warriors are a new brand. Yeah, Spurs, Heat. Just like
Bulls.
You look through history and you go, oh, they were part of the championship story for like a 5 to 10 year period. We'll see.
Okay,
maybe the Nuggets will be that. Maybe Giannis will be back.
Yeah,
I'm kind of poking fun. It's not a totally sincere take.
I dig that, but yeah, up until now, when the Celtics are actually going to win it, I've made that comp. It's just team knocking on the door that has had some playoff failures, has won a lot in the playoffs, and finally got over that hump. Yes, not apples to apples. They have had a coaching change. But basically it's. The core guys are going to get over that hump. So we'll see if the Niners ultimately can do that. Whether it's 2024 or 2025 or beyond. I think if Brock Purdy's Brock Purdy. The Dodgers Niners one. That's another one that probably doesn't sit well in the Bay. But yeah, I think that's been, not for nothing. That's just kind of been the comp, but they've been the team that can't get over the hump. Something weird always happens. They gag it away. They run into Steph. Niners keep running into Mahomes. Whatever it is. No, I'm not saying Shanahan needs to go to the front office. That's funny. Yeah, Brad Stevens went to the front office. And then they went through 2 coaches after that because of an
incident.
Of an incident. Yeah. But anyway, I think that's been the comp. And now, because I'm a believer guy that often teams that don't win the first time, like teams coming up, when you get an opportunity to win a title, and look, this is just a theory from watching sports. This is not some kind of backed up with, a lot of data. But I believe that when you have a team that gets into, like the Giants is an example, the San Francisco Giants, like they got in 2010 and they made their run and they got to the World Series and they won the first shot. Like they like if they don't win the first one, I don't think the Giants win any. Right. And look at who they beat. They beat the Texas Rangers, who went back the next year, didn't win that one either, and actually lost it in more painful fashion. And then they were done. And then it was over. The teams like the Royals, I think, are the exception to the rule.
Yeah, the Royals lost and then came back.
Royals lost and then came back. The Niners with the Chiefs. Chiefs won that first time they were in it. They've lost, but they've also continued to win. The Niners have continued to come up a little bit short. So again, it's not absolute. I'm not saying that means the Niners are never going to win it. I just think that in sports, there's a lot, it's more rare than people think for there to be an extent, because usually what happens is things fray if you don't win it for 2, 3, 4 years, or guys get older, or you have to pay guys in the NFL, and then it's just done.
I'm not going to rehash it. I said it yesterday, but I do think the Niners do have some benefit from 2 of their most important players, Purdy and McCaffrey, were not on the 19 team. Like those guys have lost 1 Super Bowl, not 2.
Fair.
I think it's easier to come. It's just like the more you lose, the harder it is to pick yourself off the mat. And I do think it helps them that it's not, and it never is totally the same group, but I think it helps them that it's not totally the same group. You need a little new blood to pick up the other guys who have been there and are like, need a little ignorance, right? Guys who go like, we can totally do this, as opposed to the guys who are like, how lucky we had to get just to have a shot to do it once, let alone twice.
Well, and I think that is what the 49ers are counting on as far as some of the infusion to their roster, not only with some of these young players who it seems like they're pretty high on, but some of the veterans in particular on the defensive line that they brought in terms of having some new blood. So I think they are understanding that they have to be better to be the same, right? Like I think the Niners had the year they had last year, and in the aftermath of it, it was basically Kyle Shanahan saying, you know what, we weren't a championship team all year, right? Like he was saying we showed signs of not being a championship team all year. The defense, all this, moves on from Wilkes, but they've changed the defense significantly. They've added to the offense. To me, it's they're trying to pay their guys to the best of their ability. Like to me, they like good teams. There comes a point where you have to be better. You have to have more talent to be just as good as you were the year before. And I think this year the Niners, they need a boost. They need some guys that weren't on the team last year or weren't contributors last year to become big time contributors for them to be the level that they were last year. And then once they get into the playoffs, maybe an even more formidable playoff team that isn't going to have to come back and miraculously win 2 of their games to get to the Super Bowl.
Part of it, they need better they need their role players to be better, right? Like and part of it, they had some rookies, but the Chiefs had some rookies, right? The muffed punt, that was off Darrell Luter's foot, you know? Braden Willis, you don't want him in that spot. Now, Trent Williams had his fair share of penalties in the game. I watched the second half of the Niners Super Bowl today, John. Ask me anything.
How egregious was the extra point, the blocked extra point on review?
Wait, what do you mean on review?
On rewatch.
Oh, it was terrible. But again, don't forget, if he makes the extra point, then the Chiefs don't kick the field goal to tie the game.
Right. They have to go for it.
If they go for it, we may never get overtime. Or they don't get it and the 49ers win. There's also that. But
there's also that. Maybe Andy Reid has to use the play that he used to win the game then.
Yeah, well, exactly.
and would have.
I mean, they held the Chiefs to 19 points for 5 quarters,
Well,
almost.
Look,
right?
here's the thing. I mean, you're right. Like we talked about this in February, but I've actually brought up my notes because, and maybe I should do a little rewind. I've just brought up my notes from the game to sort of have a frame of reference, because that's really far back for me, even though I was in the building at Allegiant. But I mean, yeah, that the fumble, the McCaffrey.
But again, here's
fumble,
what I would say about the
like,
McCaffrey fumble. It's like, I think it gets too much attention because the Chiefs fumbled into. I mean,
yes,
the Niners had won the game. Kansas City would have all the same things the Niners fans say, right? Oh, we had the McCaffrey fumble, we had the muffed punt. The Chiefs had a turnover on a quick turnaround. The Chiefs had the fumble at the 10-yard line. The Chiefs throw a weird pick to Jair Brown to start the second half, and the Niners take over at like the 50, right?
Yeah,
the Niners not ready with their script for the second, whatever it was, they don't have a good possession.
Well, it's all coming back to me now in terms of the number one thing is, if you hold them to 22, you should win. Like if you hold them to 22, even 22,
yeah, I mean,
but you held them to 19, you should win the game. And the thing that I keep coming back to, and I mean, this was the fumble, all of that. You're right, the Chiefs fumbled too, but it was the fact that the Niners were dominating. They were dominating the game, and it was 0-0, and then they were dominating the game, and it was 10-0 when it probably could have been 20. And if it's 20, the Chiefs are making their run. And I'm sure Mahomes is airing it out sooner, and it's getting a little dicey, but you might have enough at that point to hold them off. And you're playing the game from a position of advantage in terms of your play calling and things like that. And so it just, to me, it was not making the most at the beginning of the game when honestly the 49ers were more ready and prepared to play. In both games, both times they played the Chiefs, they were the team that was prepared to play. Like, Kyle had it dialed up. They just didn't make enough of what he had dialed up to get the lead that they needed to have to be able to hang on once Mahomes got in a rhythm in the second half. It was and granted that the 19 game, or the game in February of 2020, that's much farther removed. But the one thing that I remember in real time, Guy, was how similar being at Allegiant, how similar the games felt, like in terms of like eerily similar in their own way. And I know the Chiefs ended up winning the first one by 11 because they really went on an NBA run, but in the fourth quarter there in the final 7-8 minutes. But it just how similar it felt. Missed opportunities early, have the 10-point lead, get the interception in the second half. But yeah, no. What stood out to you on the rewatch, man? Like,
I thought Brock was like just totally in it.
Yeah,
he was very.
He was fine. Like, yeah.
It's stuff but it's like their protection broke down at multiple spots, not just the third down after around the 2-minute warning, not just the third down at the beginning of OT, but also the play to Debo I mentioned, where like Brock's play action takes him right into this pressure that's just right in his grill and creates a bad throw. I mean, it was eye-opening. The other thing, and this relates to Aiyuk, and I know we got to get out of here, but Aiyuk was open. Jennings was wide open a lot. Like, I think part of the reason that happens is because you have Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel out there. And now Jennings is running free. The Jennings touchdown was, an awesome play. And the Jennings throwback, like, I do think, I was going to talk about it today, but we're out of time, so maybe I'll do something on it tomorrow. But I do think if you watch that game, you see Kyle do things. If you think he can't win the big game, fine, that's your opinion. I don't have that opinion, but it's not. There's a difference between making mistakes and choking. And the Niners did things in that game. Kyle called plays, and the Juwan Jennings throwback, like that's not a choke tendency if you're going to call that play.
That's being prepared to play in the freaking Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like, that's being dialed in. No doubt. And they were prepared. Like, he had a couple of weeks to scheme it up, and a lot of it worked, but there were too many mistakes. The protection issues, I think, were definitely part of it. And they just didn't make the most of how well they actually played at the beginning of the game. Like sometimes you got to do that. Like if you're the team that's especially in a Super Bowl where you never know the emotions, like you never know which team, because teams are even the Chiefs with Mahomes, like they're a different team than they were, a few years back. Obviously they were, they'd back-to-back, they'd won the year before, but like they were, it's still the freaking Super Bowl, and you've got new guys that are nervous, and it's just a weird environment. And the Niners were the team that was more prepared to play.
I know.
And then could have been, I mean, can you imagine if it was like 20-0? And because it really probably should have been 20-0.
Would have sucked to blow that lead, JD.
It would have, but maybe they would have won 20-19 or 20-16. They hold on at the end, but it's.
The other thing on the rewatch is like when you rewatch a game, you ignore the field goals. But
like you fast forward through them,
or no, you just like, all right, yeah, Moody makes this,
made it.
Yeah. But
I thought up until the block,
but like the reality of it was those were just nail biters.
I mean, how about the kicks? I mean, we talked about the block on the extra point, but how about the kicks that Moody made in the game?
What I'm talking about, yeah,
like it was.
That's
like
what I'm saying. On the rewatch, like, oh, Moody makes this, but in real life, they were
like, I mean, it was like
incredible.
Is he going to make any of these? And he made them all. It was. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, he actually showed up in the game. Like it was being maligned all year and worried about him. He showed up.
Yep. All right, we gotta wrap this up. I'm gonna let JD skip on out of here. I am going to stay here simply for the purpose of testing some internet stuff out, and this is stuff that'll be deleted from the podcast. But I wanted to play a couple things for you, but we've gone too long tonight, so we'll move along. But Mike Silver did have a good quote about how everybody in the Rams building knows that the only person that will piss Sean McVay off if he wins the Super Bowl is Kyle. He doesn't care if anyone else wins the Super Bowl, but Kyle winning the Super Bowl pisses him off.
Pretty good.
Anyway,
it's pretty good.
All right, JD. Anything? I hate when people say that. I hate when people say this to me. But anything to promote? What I've started saying the last week is I'm trying to sell a backpack on eBay. I just promote that.
That's pretty funny. I like it.
Get my old backpack on eBay.
Well, yeah. Listen to me on KNBR, people. I'm going to be on KNBR a lot after the Giants game tomorrow night.
Friday night.
Yes. Friday night, Giants and Angels, game 1 of the 3-game series.
Here's what I'll say.
Good. Yeah.
If JD is on at night and your boy here, me, is in the car, if I'm driving late, this has happened twice now.
He will call.
I will call in. I don't use my name, though.
He will call in and see, and you've done it multiple times.
Twice I've done it.
Twice you've done it, and twice I did not know it was you.
Yeah.
Which is always fun. But I get so locked in, and you're even giving me a hint. Like, what was the Mario's in North Beach?
Mario's in North Beach. That was a hint. Yeah.
It was a hint, and I should have known. But yeah, tomorrow on KNBR, Friday, that's right. Friday for the podcast audience here. Friday. And then I'm on a bunch next week after Giants games, and I'm going to be filling in with Greg Papa a couple of times next week, and I'm going to be on a lot into June and July in a lot of different spaces. But you can give me a listen or a watch on the KNBR socials and on the radio 104.5 and 680. Thanks for having me, Guy.
JD, good seeing you, brother. There he goes.
Appreciate you.
And there we go. I don't know how you leave, John. I
was going to say, do you need me to just X out of it?
Yeah, I need you to just go.
I'm just going to X out of the browser.
Just disappear.
Because I don't want you to knock yourself off. All right, I'm literally going to X out of the browser.
Goodbye. There he goes. He's gone. All right, now the show is basically concluded. I have had some streaming issues the last few shows. If you've been with us for those shows, you know that. So what I'm going to do now is just test some stuff out. So that means that you're going to watch me play some videos that if you want to go, by all means, hit that like button. Thanks for being here. Appreciate y'all. If you're watching, leave a comment, especially if you're watching after the fact, because you can get, I'm using some of those comments for the mailbag. If you're listening on the podcast, leave a review in the Apple Podcast, 5 stars, leave a question. So I'm going to start doing this now. And I want to
we
see.
all know that's kind of the number, especially for running backs when you get over age 30.
And I'm just going to see if
in your mind,
I'm using a different streaming thing today. So I'm just going to see if this thing has, you can stick around. You can ask questions. Maybe I'll get to some stuff, but let's see if this thing works. And maybe you'll watch a clip that you didn't see yesterday.
We all know that's kind of the number, especially for running backs when you get over age 30. In your mind, how long do you anticipate you can keep this rolling? How long do you want to play?
As long as I can. I feel better than I ever have. I feel great. I think I never put a limit on anything. I love football more than anything. It's something that I've been doing since I was 7 years old. I don't have any plans of stopping anytime soon. And so, I don't have an end in sight.
All right. I'm not freezing there. Let's play another one here.
Well, I think the thing I love most about Brock is, obviously he can play. I think he's silenced every doubter on the planet, even though there's probably still some out there. But he can do anything. He can make any throw. He can extend plays. He does so much without the ball, too, as from a leadership standpoint, from being in the locker room. I think he's definitely more comfortable this year, more vocal, more comfortable in the huddle, even though he was extremely comfortable last year too. And so to answer your question, I don't know. I think if he just continues to be him, we'll be.
A lot of craziness that came off of Aaron's absence yesterday, as expected. Did you have any contact with him? Like talk to him after between yesterday and today?
No, I haven't.
Robert, you said that you were aware that Aaron was not going to be here before yesterday. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And Tyrod said he had only found out that morning. Is there any reason that wasn't communicated to him before? Or?
No, it's a one-on-one conversation. It's not something that the team needed to know about.
I think you're getting some blowback from media people about the use of the word unexcused, and because you were okay with him not being here, but you used the word unexcused. So I'm wondering maybe if you could clarify why you used that word. And also, did you tell did Aaron know he was going to be termed unexcused, and how he reacted to that?
No, you're fine. Talked about it yesterday, but Aaron and I are on the exact same page. There's no issue between Aaron or his teammates, for that matter. So, like I said, we addressed it yesterday. It's more of an issue for everyone outside the building than it is inside, and that's about it.
I think he added in his teammates because there was a story in the New York Post that said there was a problem with the teammates. All right, let's try another video. This one I liked yesterday.
But in your mind, is there anybody that's like, I'm not putting them back there?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of guys. Yeah, I'm not going back there. Yeah. And Lamar's not going back there. And Mark's not going back there. Kyle's not going back there. B. Steve's not going back there. Roquan's not going back there. Who else? Who? Matabike not going back there. Falele's not going back there. That's for sure. Stanley not going back there. No, there's a lot of no's. What? Catching kicks? Was he? Steve Bisciotti was returning kicks. If Steve wants to return kicks, Steve may go back there. Yes, he's allowed. He can do whatever he wants. But no, we're going to stick with it to the serious point. We're not going to put Zay back there. We're going to put our return guys back there. Those are the guys that do it. I mean, if we got an emergency and we had to have a guy because of injuries, we would do it. That shouldn't happen. We've got guys that can do it. We have returners that can do it, and some young guys that want to do it. So we'll have the guys.
See, this is the thing that, like, I don't know how to get rid of it. Like, I would honestly restream. I would use you if your interface wasn't so freaking stupid. Sorry, maybe I'm a first-time user, so maybe it's not stupid, and I'm just being. The one thing I don't understand is why is the picture reversed on Restream? This is a weird. I usually use StreamYard. This is bizarre. I do think it looks clearer than the StreamYard normally does. I tried to tell all you computer guys who weighed in with me, including Justin, who's in the chat here. I'll try to tell him, it's probably your computer, man. And I was like, I don't think it is. All right, that I mean, camera settings are the same camera settings. This is Restream instead of StreamYard. If there was something else that was neither one of those two things, Restream is really hard for the guests. It's annoying for the guests. I don't want to flip the camera. I guess I could. Oh, whatever. But it reverses the guess too. What am I selling the 585 hats? Yeah. What is the 585? I know 808 is Moy. Internet, it's not the internet. My guys, I am hardwired into 1 gig of fiber. We are flying high. I'm like a rock star in the hate in the 60s. I'm flying so high with this internet. So it's not that. I just, it was the browser struggled when, the browser struggled when I said I was going to play this video tomorrow.
Despite such brilliance, such success.
You know what, actually? Let's actually do it right now. Let's do a real, I'm going to do this. Oh, God damn it. Let's restream. I'm telling you guys. Let's stop. Hide. And now I'm not going to be able to get it back. All right. Let's actually do this right now. I'm going to right now. I was going to do this tomorrow, but since we're all here. Oh, wait. I don't want to do this right now because then you guys will have already seen it. I'll do it tomorrow. Should I do it now? Should I do it tomorrow? I'll do it right now. But only if you promise to watch it when I put it up tomorrow. Okay. Okay. There we go. Then let's do this. One, not that. I'm telling you guys, this is so stupid. If I can pull this off. Restream is just like, what are we doing here, guys? Why are you making this so non-intuitive? All right, here we go. Where are we at on the stream? 111, 112, let's say. Hey, what's up, everybody? Guy here. Welcome to the channel. I was watching Kay Adams' show the other day on YouTube. I saw that Mike Silver was on promoting his book, and I thought, I'm going to watch that. Kay does a lot. She's very dialed in with the Niners. She does the weekly Debo thing. Silver very dialed in with the Niners, and she asked him a question that is often debated in these streets, and I thought Silver had a very, very good answer. I'm going to play that for you now, and then I want to talk about it. So here we go. Let's take a listen here. Kay Adams talking to Mike Silver about whether Kyle Shanahan can win it.
Despite such brilliance, such success, the teams come up short in big games. Why?
One answer is Patrick Mahomes, right? He's playing a generational player twice. But I think what people look to is they say, he was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons when they blew that lead. That's on Dan Quinn, certainly, but Kyle stayed aggressive and it blew up late in that game. Then fourth quarter lead in Super Bowl 54 in Miami against the Chiefs, 10-point fourth quarter lead midway through, it blows up. And they had a 10-point lead in this Super Bowl. It wasn't so much a blown lead, but again, his decisions very under the microscope. I think that, Kyle Shanahan wants the game to be played on his terms. We see that time and time again. When the game is played on his terms, it works out well. And so the question is, what happens when it isn't? And we've seen some coaches on the fly be able to adjust just brilliantly under adverse conditions. With Kyle, that's still open to question. Now, that said, the game was playing out at his terms this last Super Bowl late in the game. If they hit that third down coming out of the 2-minute warning, they probably bleed the clock down, kick a field goal at the end, and that narrative is blown up. It's a game of inches. They weren't ready for the blitz. It led to an incompletion, and Mahomes. So, Kyle Shanahan is a brilliant coach. You'll see in this book with access to all these guys. They all talk about it. They all talk about the journey. We learn a lot about what makes him tick. But for all his dominance over McVay in the rivalry, the one game that mattered most, McVay won and then won a Super Bowl, and that is all that matters to me.
I always look.
Now, if you've been watching me for a while, you know that my take on Kyle is that he hasn't won a Super Bowl, not because he can't, but because he hasn't. And I thought Silver kind of brought that whole thing together. First, he goes Mahomes. That's a big reason why, which I agree with. And then the second part that I thought was interesting was he says there is a certain way, and this was reflected by that, never came back by deficit by 7 points or more in the fourth quarter, whatever that stat was. But that Kyle, they can't play from behind. And there is a fundamental truth to it, that they are not a home run hitting team. I've said this many times. They are a doubles hitting team. And it's harder for them because they don't hit deep shots over the top. It's just harder for them sometimes. It's so much about the run, setting up the pass, and wearing you down and all that stuff. And that stuff is true. But then again, as Silver said, that's not how the Super Bowl played out. So, it's a fair question, and it's a fair question until he wins a Super Bowl. And it's a fair question, on one hand, you're like, well, if he keeps going to Super Bowls, it kind of proves he's an elite coach. But if he doesn't win one, then it's never going to end this conversation about whether or not he's the dude that can actually get it done or whether or not he's not. I mean, the thing they had on the screen that said 3 double-digit leads blown. One of them is an assistant. 2 of them as head coaches. That's a pretty jarring stat. But in order to be where he's been, he's won so many big games. And it's why, if I were hiring for a head coach right now, I think you'd have to take Andy Reid number 1. I would take Kyle Shanahan number 2. In fact, the list for me is the Shanahan guys. If you wanted to take McVay number 2, I'd have no beef with that. I'm going to go with Kyle because he's won a lot of their head-to-head meetings. But I'd have McVay 3. And to me, they're all this is tier 1 is Andy. To me, tier 2 is Kyle and McVay right now. Number 4 on my list, I would hire Matt LaFleur. Maybe that's not your list. I'd hire LaFleur. 5, I'd hire Jim Harbaugh. So would suck to be, if I'm the GM, that would suck. But that'd be my list. Andy, Kyle, McVay, LaFleur, Harbaugh. And you go, wait a second. Tomlin's had a better career. John Harbaugh has had a better career. Sean Payton has had a better career. They've had longer careers. All 3 of those guys won Super Bowls. Kyle hasn't. LaFleur hasn't. Jim Harbaugh, what are you talking about? If I had to hire a coach right now for the future, the fact that Mike Tomlin won 12 games last year is incredible. And Arthur Smith might actually stabilize the Steelers' offense, even though their quarterback situation remains weird. Can Sean Payton do it without Breeze? We're about to find out. John Harbaugh, I think I'd probably have Tomlin ahead of Harbaugh. And the reason is, I think Tomlin would have won more playoff games if Lamar Jackson was his quarterback. I think Lamar Jackson with Mike Tomlin wins more postseason games. But you might go wait, Tomlin versus Kyle, how can you have Kyle ahead of Tomlin? Mike Tomlin's career playoff record's 8-10 with a Super Bowl win. Kyle's is 8-4. And you might say, John Harbaugh's 12-10. So he's won more playoff games than Tomlin. But anyway, I'd have those guys right there. And then keeping an eye on, maybe can be in this list soon, is D'Amico, is Mike McDaniel. Stefanski wins the coach of the year. But D'Amico's a let's see. But I would have a really hard time right now hiring a coach that doesn't directly impact my quarterback. I mean, look at everything that Tomlin's gone through, both his quarterback turnover and his coordinator turnover. Same with John Harbaugh, offensive coordinator turnover. When you have Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, you have the best play caller in the NFL. One of them. Who also knows how to run a football team. Right? And that's an extremely valuable thing. So I rewatched the Super Bowl on Thursday, the second half. A little the first half, and then I didn't have time. I just skipped ahead to the second half. Rewatched the second half. I hate to break it to the haters. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. The haters. Kyle was good that day. Spagnuolo in big spots was better. Spagnuolo surprised him. Kyle was not perfect. Kyle made mistakes, but he did some really special things, some excellent things. Go back and listen to, well, whatever. JD John Dickinson on the show Thursday talking about how prepared the Niners were for that game. And they were, but it wasn't just that they were prepared. They also were able to make plays when the game became a different game late. Mahomes made more. Maybe we'll look back. Kyle will never have won a Super Bowl, and we'll say it was more than, it wasn't just that he played Mahomes. It was something else missing. But I don't think that's the case. That's my list. Give me your list down in the comments below. Hit that like button. Appreciate y'all. All right. There's that video. That'll go up tomorrow morning. We'll see if you watch. Some of you said you're going to watch it. We'll see if you're going to watch it. We wanted the ball third, Kyle. That same Kyle, not as fun. Not a great moment. Not a great moment. I actually understood why they didn't take the ball, or why they did take the ball. I understood it initially when I thought he was giving his defense a rest. And then he said, yeah, that's actually not what it was. I was like, oh, I don't love that logic so much anymore. Was not perfect. But the idea that he choked, I think, is incorrect. He lost. I don't think he choked. I'll add that little comment in there. It'll make the people watching the video tomorrow think they're watching a live video, and they'll start leaving comments. Oh, guys here. All right. Thanks for hanging out. I guess we figured out that it wasn't the computer, but I got some more stuff to figure out. So anyway, on that note, thanks for hanging tonight, everybody.